Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely, totally overjoyed actually to be able to speak to you about a topic that is so near and dear to my heart and has been for many, many years. But heart-based approach caring is really about, it's not a revolution, it is a revival. We are just actually going down to those depths and breadths of what it actually means to be human. And in this context, when I say heart, just want to reiterate that I know that there is a biological heart. Obviously, you all know too, that pumps blood through our body. But in our case today, what we're actually talking about is the emotional heart and the essence of being human. This approach is actually based on emotional intelligence, positive psychology, and a little bit of neuroscience. I am not a neuroscientist, but have read so much in the field that it really ties in well to the emotional intelligence and the positive psychology side of things. So as Carissa introduced me as a founder of Positivity Center, we really exist to enhance the well-being of organizations. And we've been doing that since about 2016, primarily in the senior and dementia care and aged care sector, by enhancing the well-being of their people. And when I say people, I mean that's people like you, it's their family members, it's the residents and the persons that you're caring for on a day-to-day basis. And so for a large part of our beginning, we were so focused on how to be happy, how to be happy, how to be happy. We've created a lot of tools and resources and courses and taught and mentored a lot of different people in a lot of different spaces through facilitation and coaching. And what I found was, it was a little bit more than just about being happy. So I'm going to share that story with you. But before I do, a few little things that I kind of like to put on the stage so that we are all kind of thinking and understand from the same place for our session today is, so well-being is a term that I feel like we need to talk about. The reason why is because it gets construed and used in the same situations with wellness often. So it's really important to understand that we can't have well-being without wellness. So wellness, as many of you know it, I mean, I look at it from a terms of sleep well, eat well, and get exercise. So you do those three things, which you start on, and that's really great. And then what we really focus on is adding the more holistic things about being a human being. So in a lot of different sectors, it could look like, spirituality, it could look like finances. There's a lot of different domains that are important to people's well-being. And in our context, what Positivity Center really zeroes down into is the psychosocial component and the emotional component of one's well-being. And positive psychology is a discipline that's been around for decades. I mean, you could actually say it goes back centuries because they've been talking about how and why it's important to be happy since Socrates and Aristotle. We won't go into the history of positive psychology. That's not the intent or aim for our session today. But what positive psychology is what makes life worth living. And in our context, it's really interesting because these terms can mean something different to each one of us. And, person-centered care, one of the things that we talk about, but becomes kind of hard to deliver. And this is why, because everyone has something different that makes their life worth living. And so that's why positive psychology actually goes hand in hand so well with the healthcare sector, because we really are after person-centered care. And then last but not least, positivity. So positivity really is about building the social and psychological resources to move you through all of life. So the highs, the lows, all the aspects of being human. And what we do at Positivity Center is take these three concepts and we apply them to this sector where we are. The reason why we do that is because we want our tasks to be fueled by connection. And when care is happening, we want connection to happen simultaneously with the care. So that is our overall aim. And that is why we use these three sort of different domains in order to do so. So one of the things you may or may not realize is that positivity is more than just being happy. So a few years ago, like right in the middle of COVID, I had the opportunity to do a 3-part well-being series for a community out in Canmore. And so we were doing this 3-part well-being series, and it was all virtual. No one was used to virtual at that time, and we were also used to in-person. But as you remember, COVID flipped our worlds upside down in this area. So anyways, one of the things I always used to do was I used to start off a well-being uh, webinar or topic most often with what's one thing that fuels your well-being? And I would ask that question mostly because as I iterated in the beginning, it was all about teaching people how to be happy, right? So that was what I was there to do. I'm like, let's figure out what makes us happy and do more of it so we can just be happy. So when I asked that question, and you guys will all remember that context, and I don't want to bring you back there and cause a ton of trauma, but I do want you to remember what it was like during that time. I got zero response. When I asked, what fuels your well-being? What's one thing that you do? The room, well, the virtual room was dead silent. So as a facilitator, I'm like, well, I'm going to have to pivot here somehow, some way. Then I asked the question differently. What's one thing you used to do that used to fuel your well-being? And when I asked that question in that way, tears started to come, a range of emotion, people in the chat, people sharing, taking themselves off mic. You know, that was the time when we used to be able to hug somebody and then all of a sudden we couldn't even touch them. So think about that. I was missing out because I was so focused on making people think about what makes them happy and do more of what makes them happy, on a complete aspect of their human experience and a pathway to connection that I really just couldn't ignore anymore. And in that session, what happened was absolutely amazing. Everyone experienced such a range of emotion, good, bad, ugly, light, dark, everything in between. And there was a safe space. And they understood, once they felt understood, then they understood that they could take my hand and we could move forward. And we did complete a session and we did get somewhere. So I just want you for a second to just close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you're in a completely dark room and you're experiencing a heavy depression. The lights are out, the blackout curtains are there. It's like so dark sometimes that you feel like you can't even see your face, your hand in front of your face. And then somebody just decides they're going to walk in and they're going to turn on the lights, full blast, open the blackout curtains, and they're like, it's time to go. Come on, let's get up. Let's go for a walk. You can't be here anymore. It's not good for you. Come on, let's go. What is your reaction when somebody does that to you? Imagine you were that person in that dark room and somebody just clicks on the lights. It's too much. You might even get some colorful words from people. You might get, yeah, leave me alone, go away. I don't want to eat. I don't want to get dressed. I don't want to shower. Uh, Whatever you're going to get. I think your minds are probably already going because you've probably been here before. I'm sure I've seen this time and time and time again. So the thing is, when we try to shower with happiness, it's just too bright. So we're not meeting people in the emotional state that they're in. And then we experience a lack of trust and a decreased quality in our relationships. And instead of coming together and connecting, we're actually repelling and we're making people feel distanced from us. And we're making them feel like we just don't get them and we just don't understand them. And we do this with ourselves too, right? Because everything we talk about here is designed for emotional agility and response and regulation in oneself and with others. We can't do one without the other in the care sector. So imagine me in that workshop, I didn't pivot, right? Imagine I just kept with my happy question, what fuels your well-being? And I was digging in on, we got to think about what makes us happy, because if we can't think about what makes us happy, we're not going to, oh, it would have been terrible. I couldn't pour happy because pouring happy would not wash away the tears, right? I'm sure you can all agree. So then there's a little bit of darkness. Yes, you're all seeing a black screen. What happens when we aren't meeting people in their space? Why are we not willing to go there? Most people have shared with me that they are uncomfortable. So when we're uncomfortable, we tend to, right, we want to avoid pain, right? We don't want to lean into pain. Who wants to like willingly feel pain? So we shut off the uncomfortable. We get scared that we're going to get stuck in the darkness. Look, doesn't it feel weird to be looking at a completely black screen right now? It's like awkward. Doesn't it feel awkward to you? Because it feels awkward to me. But this is where vulnerability lies, and I could feel it just surging in me right now. But this is also where benefits of some of those darker, messy, and negative emotions live. And if we don't acknowledge that we have feelings and that we're not saying, actually, if we don't acknowledge that someone is experiencing a negative emotion in some way, we're actually saying it's not safe for you to feel that. And that's not safe for you to feel with me. And then we just can't really be human. So, what if we had the skills? What if we had the skills? Because sometimes I think when somebody shares with me, I'm scared I'm going to get stuck there. To me, that's possibly saying, not saying in all cases, but it's possibly saying, I don't know if I have the skills to move into that dark place with someone. But what if we were willing to engage in not being happy with other people? What becomes possible when we're actually willing to not try to be happy all the time? And like I shared with you in the well-being seminar that I gave, people followed me. They took my hand and we went through a series of really powerful well-being topics about balance and wellness. And we talked about mindfulness, and they took that in. So I guarantee you, and I've seen it time and time again when I spend a whole year managing a dementia care community, and I, for a whole year, saw people do this, residents do this with me. Like the ones that were combative, the ones that were aggressive, the ones that never wanted to come to exercise class, didn't ever want to try art. They all came. Our engagement rate was so high. It was unreal. So I've seen that this works, and I know that this works. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sharing this with the other works. But people will follow you to the light. So what happened is I paused and went a different direction, right? And I decided that this was a really important thing, and I want you to write it down. It's important to sit with and not in. So there's a really big difference. I mean, write this down. It's so distinguishable difference. And this actually came about from a conversation I was having with my friend from JVR Consulting, Lindsay Recknell, here in Calgary. And we were nerding out talking about emotions. And she's like, you just got to sit with the emotion, not in the emotion. And there's a really big difference, right? Imagine sitting with emotions like you sit with a friend and have coffee, or go out with a partner and have a glass of wine or dinner, and not going into the darkness, right? Because when we just had that black screen, it was just too black. It was just too uncomfortable. And we were in it. We were too far deep into it. And so this sort of, if you will, called spectrum of light allows us to sit with, but not in. It allows us to say to people, I see you, and it's a bit uncomfortable, and it's okay. And it's okay for them to be human. And then we need to also learn to do this for ourselves. So we're going to play around with this for a little bit. This is where I need you to open up your chat window and get ready to do some typing. So yes, I use the term negative emotion, positive emotion. I just want to clarify that I don't mean positive emotion, negative emotion is good and bad. It's all of it. And in the research, it's important that it's distinguished negative and positive, because if we didn't distinguish it, then we wouldn't be able to have the research that we do. So here we go. So there are a bunch of pictures on this screen. What I'd like you to do is to think about which picture resonates with you most when you're experiencing a negative emotion or you're like in your worst mood. And just type it in the chat. As you find your picture, I just want you to type it in the chat. Mine is the chains. Yeah, there's the chains coming through. The waterfall, yeah, because it can be a plus or a minus, can it? Broken rope, the frayed string, fire, the hammer and the nail. Oh, it's a tough one, hey? The labyrinth, yeah. The spiral staircase going down, right? Just perpetuating that thinking, just downward spiral for sure. The green trees or the white trees, yeah, the trunks of the trees just never ending, right? So great. Now I want you to think about what emotion might you articulate that you feel when you're connected to that picture and to that worst mood in your mind? Like, what is the emotion that comes to you that might be a kind of a darker, uncomfortable emotion? That's something they're overwhelmed. Yeah. For me, it's stuck. The chains always make you feel stuck or heavy. Turmoil. Well, that's a good one. Very good. Great vocabulary. Disorganized. Fear. Very common one. Susan David says, fear is courage walking. We're all going to feel fear, aren't we? Constrained, held in place, disconnected. Absolutely. Okay. Feel free if something comes later that just type it in the chat as a way for you to just articulate what emotion is there for you when you're in your worst mood. Got frustrated, done, losing grip, losing connection. Yeah. And remember that black space, and we were talking about how the black or the white or the yellow, they're so disconnected. We lose connection with people too. So you thought of the picture, thought of yourself in your worst mood. You thought what emotion you might be feeling in that worst mood. How would you like to be? Hold on, sorry. There. How would you like to be supported when you're experiencing those difficult emotions? And I want you to just type it in the chat, right? Like some of you talked about feeling fear. How would you like to be supported when you're experiencing fear? Some of you want to be left alone. Yeah, absolutely. How else do you want to be supported? Somebody to listen to? Yeah, absolutely. And if you're alone too, it's also nice to know that someone's giving you space, and also to have almost like a trust that they'll probably check in on me later. Rest assured. Yeah, that's me. When I'm stuck, I need somebody to kind of just be beside me and resonate with why I'm feeling stuck. And then tell me that they're there if we want to talk about possibilities at some time. Yeah, allowed to expand. Asked if I want someone to sit with me. Yeah, asking the questions is so powerful, isn't it? Because sometimes we're even not that great knowing what ourselves want from ourselves, right? So what about when we're with other people? What do they need or want from us? And so checking in is so critical. Check in and just ask someone what they might need. Absolutely. And this can be kind of I was working with a student last September, and she felt very uncomfortable when a resident would cry with her. And so I really talked her through that, because I said, yeah, I get it. Of course you're going to feel uncomfortable, right? Like someone's crying, you really don't want them to cry. And most often when we're crying in our own tears, it's cathartic to cry. But sometimes I know that I'll be feeling like yesterday, I was actually feeling a bit of loss over a situation, and tears kept welling. And I was very conscious that I kept trying to like push them away because I didn't want the tears to shed. But I was in a time and a space where I could let them, come and release. And so I eventually just allowed myself, right, to do that. So other comments kind of in the chat. A quiet space to process, super, super helpful. Talking with someone works for you. Yeah, absolutely. I can resonate with that too. And letting me feel it without judging it. And it's not my fault for feeling it. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. I think the not judging part about emotions is like probably the most difficult, because sometimes, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but I remember as a child, if I missed my grandmother, my dad was like, absolutely, you can cry and be sad about that. But if I was trying to get into beauty school and I couldn't get in, he didn't think that was valuable to cry about, because to him it didn't really have value. It wasn't attached to one of his values, right? And so yeah, not judging ourselves for the things that we feel, and also not judging others, because we're not all going to feel. We might feel emotion for sure. I'll show you later, there's 6 universal emotions, but we're not all going to feel the same thing at the same time and for the same reason. So absolutely not judging the emotion, or judging that person or yourself is feeling that particular emotion from a particular situation. So, so true. And I love that, Michelle. Thank you so much. Crying allows the emotion to move through you so you can process it. I'll just let you take over when we do the slide on on the processing of it all, because absolutely. I was actually chatting with Dr. Faith Galliano. She's like a dementia trauma emotional expert. And she was sharing that with me. She's like, just give people 90 seconds because that's all it really takes for the emotion to move through the body. Just let it flow, right? If you don't let it flow and you're trying to stuff it all the time, you certainly can't process it, right? Okay, so good. Thank you all for being so awesome in the chat. It's so powerful. And I can tell a lot of you know a lot about this. And you know what? That's the thing. I think we all know a lot about this intuitively. And so when we talk about heart-based approach caring, it's just giving ourselves permission to go into those intuitive spaces that where we're just human and we can just connect in a human way to other people. So, okay, we're going to play around a little bit more with some emotions, and we're going to kind of focus on a different area for a little bit. So similar type of situation. These are all mostly different pictures, but some are the same, as you'll notice, because some pictures can evoke, the same picture will evoke something dark for one person and something light for someone else. So find a picture that resonates with you, that really you gravitate towards when you feel like you're in your best mood. So best mood ever now. When you have that picture, just put it in the chat. What's the picture that really connects you to feeling lighter, happier, maybe the laneway of trees? For me, mine is the boardwalk leading out to the ocean. The carousel, hiking, the forest and trees with sunlight. The lemon, because I love all things lemon. I know. I tried making limoncello tiramisu the other week. It was amazing. The waterfall. See, somebody picked the waterfall in the negative emotional space, and now someone's picking it for the positive emotional space. There's a lot of energy with waterfalls. The lemon, the lemon. Oh, the lemon's a popular one. The lemon in the trees. The books. Yes. I'm so curious as to why you picked the books. Mary, so cool. Any of the outdoor or the yellow. Yeah, the wheat is a nice one too, isn't it? The field of wheat. The green fir tree. Yeah, I love the vibrant color in that one. Absolutely. Okay, awesome. So similarly, we've got sort of a vision of ourselves and something visual that's helping us connect to a positive emotional space, or us in our best mood, call it. What's the emotion that you could articulate? If you could think of an emotion that you're feeling when you're thinking of yourself in your best mood, what is it? Serenity. Mine's peace, just so you know. When I think about just the ocean, there's this zen-like peace. Yeah. A lot of serenity coming up, peace, a playfulness. Great descriptive word. Nice work, Marie France. Fresh, love it. And so kind of peace again. Yeah, and that's so interesting that a lot of us are just wanting sort of that consistency, that middle place, the neutral emotional space. A lot of that, the emotions that you guys are putting out on the chat are in that neutral emotional space for sure. The nature smells, resilience. That's a beautiful emotion to be feeling. And creativity. Oh, yes. And that is a great thing to surge into and dive into too, because creativity is required, actually, I think, when we look at emotional processing. Okay. So thank you so much for being so interactive in the chat. My third and final question with this particular slide is really just about the support. So when you're feeling light, or if you will, some positive emotion, some of you are feeling peace or feeling resilience or creativity or playfulness, how would you like to be supported when you're experiencing those emotions? And just type that in the chat. You know, are you alone? Are you with people? What kind of support do you feel is most helpful for you when you're in those celebratory emotions, the ones we tend to celebrate? For me, when I'm in that kind of peaceful, positive space, I would say I love to enjoy peace with solitude and like being alone. But there's also an element of like when I get to feel more high energy, positive emotions, I want to celebrate those with other people. So what about for you? Alone, solitude, or with one or two special friends or family? Yes, awesome. Going out and enjoying with people, and peace as well. Yeah. being with like-minded individuals. Find your tribe totally gets me jazzed up, that's for sure. Companionship, inspiration, solitude again, being surrounded by loved ones that know where you started and where you are now. Oh, that is so powerful, actually. Thanks, Shivoni. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. But yeah, that's a really powerful tool, especially, when you are in this kind of, I guess you could call it, and I'll share it later, a reactive and a proactive cycle. Thinking about where you've been and how far you've come is a very, very powerful curiosity question to ask yourself and to talk about with other people, because it helps you get a little closer to your goals. Yeah. To share and be contagious, absolutely. More solitude and interactions on my terms. Beautiful. And someone else put here, Michelle, I like to do kind gestures for others and hope people will allow me to do something kind. That is so powerful. So random acts of kindness I used to do a lot of talks on random acts of kindness just because they're a thing you can do, just a bit of science I gotta share. If you do 5, it's better than doing 1 for 5 days in a row. So the benefit to the person who's giving increases when you do 5 in like 1 day. And random acts of kindness are like, I call them a double lollipop because there's something sweet on both ends for both the giver and the receiver. So it's really a beautiful thing. And random acts of kindness, especially in our care sector, are so essential because I find that, especially with caregiver burnout being so high, we get so focused on we're giving and we're giving away. So we like give care, and as soon as we start to realize that we can actually receive care at the same time. So when you give a gift, you get a gift, if that kind of makes sense. There's more of a cycle of give and take, giving and receiving, and it helps to actually prevent against caregiver burnout. So awesome. Traveling alone with people in the same space, or a good time to be challenged with new tasks. All awesome stuff. And again, notice that it's sometimes people want to be alone, sometimes people want to be with other people. But basically, when we feel joy, most of us want to celebrate joy or feel joy with someone. So why is this important? Well, because we are emotional beings and relational beings. And it's really important to go through both sides of the spectrum, if you will, because really none of our lives, and you can probably all attest to this because you're all in the chat, are exempt from the presence of, at least from time to time, negative emotions. So all emotions have a purpose, and they're giving us data so that we can figure out how we want to respond to the world around us. So one of the things that we need to absolutely learn in a new way, and this is I feel like this is almost a myth busting slide, is that, so I don't know if any of you have read Jill Bolt Taylor. She's a neuroscientist who had a stroke and wrote a book about it. And also Brene Brown speaks to this issue too. But so she says, as humans, we are feeling creatures who think rather than thinking creatures who feel. But we have this tendency to go and feel, well, we think we're thinking beings that think, but we're actually feeling beings that think. So we feel before we think, but we think that we think before we feel. And I'm not trying to confuse any of you. That's why the quote's on the slide. But this really is something that we need to start learning in a new way, because if we're going to be able to meet people in emotional spaces that we are slightly uncomfortable with, and even meet ourselves without judgment, like some of you were talking in the chat, we need to embrace the fact that we are truly, truly at our core, in our center, and in our essence, emotional beings. And that is the essence and the basis of the heart-based approach. And so it's not just about the happy emotions, right? It's all of it. And here's the one thing. So oftentimes I get brought in to do like a facilitation, and I love facilitating, don't get me wrong. But if the facilitation is only based on, what makes us happy, then it's kind of like, we know there's a laceration or a cut, right? And I'm just going to put a Band-Aid over it. But I think you and me and all of us on this call, we don't just want to put a Band-Aid on everything, right? It's not just about symptom management. We really want people to live their best life, and we want those lacerations to heal. So we need some polysporin, and a Band-Aid. And so we need to be able to embrace and go through all of the ups and downs of life. So in the chat, again, I need you to be interactive, but I do want to kind of ask this question: what your goals really are, like as a caregiver, or even, what what prompted you to want to be on this call, knowing, because I loved the description about it. You knew you were coming to talk about emotions, right? Which is kind of a language we don't all have the vocabulary for, but I feel like I'm speaking with people that have a ton of vocabulary on it. Um, Most often, the response that I get, and I'm looking forward to getting your responses, is things like, I want people to get the best care. Sometimes I really want people to be happy or live a life of meaning and purpose. What are some of your caregiver goals? You want to see people just survive? I'm in this world to love. My goal is to love whoever I'm taking care of. Beautiful. Thank you, Mary. Another, right? Living life with honesty and solutions, to feel before we think and speak. I know we all thought we were thinking beings. I want to continue to have a big heart while caring without being burned out and bitter. Oh, you're going to make me cry. Love is life, absolutely. I want residents and their families to feel like their life has value and is honored. Um, at this very moment, wanting tools to help heal the COVID wound with myself and with others. Safety to become a messenger of hope. Shared experience to support with community and curiosity. Oh my gosh, I just love all your answers. I didn't anticipate getting so emotional. Yeah, all your answers are so real and so honest. And most, yeah. I want to love all the folks on this call, how beautiful everyone's words are. I've never met a caregiver who doesn't care, put it that way, right? And I think that there's so much burden and stress on us. And I think part of the solution and why I bring this question up is because there are things standing in the way of us getting to those goals. And because we work in medicine, and you probably all have a medical background, I don't, right? I have the positive psychology and the well-being background, and I've had the ability to work in care in not a clinical way, but in a non-clinical way, right? I've been there to support the person and not the patient. So we've got staffing issues. We've got pay. The pay is low. It's not enough to sustain living. Burnout is on the rise. And the people we're caring for, they're lonely, they're bored, they're isolated, they lack engaging because they just don't feel like it anymore. And so basically, to summarize everything that we're all just saying is that we want to live our best life, and we also want the people that we are working with and the people that we are caring for to live their best life. I think we can all agree on that. So the thing about living our best life is it's not a medical problem to solve. Many of the illnesses, the people, the patients and persons that we are supporting, their illnesses, their diseases, their neurocognitive decline, they're usually uncurable at some point, right? And I'm not sure where the setting is that you are in, but there's probably a large number of you that are working in settings where it's all about symptom management. We can't take away the illness. So there's no treatment. And so how do we then live our best lives inside conditions of loss and pain and hurt? Because I bet you if there was a pill, we'd all be taking it. So again, there is no pill that a medical professional can give any one of you or any one of your residents or patients that will take it all away. We don't ask wasps to make honey, right? We ask the bees to make honey. And we cannot continue to ask the medical profession to solve for this problem. This is where it's up to us. And this is where we get to choose that we're going to feel life with other people. We are absolutely going to learn to use our hearts, whether it's working with me, just coming to this webinar, deciding what you're going to do after it. This is the moment where all of you are going to decide that you're here because you want to learn to use your heart and give your head a bit of a break. At least we're going to do that for the bit of our session left together. And I know we're going to get really close on time. So I'm going to take you through a couple of processes. On the quick side, we'll have a Q&A, and then just know that you can reach out to me, or you can also use a tool for caring tools that I gave at the beginning, which are amazing because there's a quick video of me with bangs that don't have bangs anymore. When I was a care partner for my godmother, and we utilized the tools and the resources and the evidence. They're all evidence-based from the field of positive psychology. So you can use those, they're free. And there's a downloadable tool book that you can use to go alongside with it, that you can, it's for you and for the persons that you're carrying with. You can also adapt it to your teams for sure. But we're here, like if you want to have a coach, a mentor, a partner, a facilitator, whatever, to kind of help make that a little bit more infiltrated into culture. Because as you probably know, and I've experienced, it's going to take a lot to change this culture. But I know we all have the hearts to do it. So I just don't want anyone to get overwhelmed, but there's a lot on this slide. So this is what we've kind of done. We've kind of broken it down into not just one system for all emotions, but sort of two systems. So there's a reactive system. You could call this the processing system, if you will, the responding system. So these are steps that you would want to take when you are responding to an emotion. And I'm not saying that it's only negative or dark or messy emotions that live here, but generally speaking, that's kind of when we are needing to manage, right? Because when we feel happy, we don't feel like there's anything to manage. We're feeling happy and everything's going well. So it's more so when things aren't going so well, you might be low in energy, you might be noticing a problem, not really sure how to solve for that problem. So these are the 4 steps you're going to want to take as you're going through that. So the first thing is obviously just like we did in this is why I did that thing with you at the beginning, is like find the words to name the emotion. Okay, I've got like some other suggestions up there. I don't think anybody put any of those in the chat when we were in the chat. Yeah, we just want to be able to articulate emotions. You can do so by, I have a couple little tools. These are emotion cards, positive, negative, and neutral. I have a whole bunch of those. These are easy to get. This is my emotion clock. It's by my coffee station, so I see this every morning. I can't say I use it every day. I should really get in the habit, but that's kind of an idea. And then also too, if you just type in emotion wheel in a Google search, a slew of emotions will come up, and it's a really good guide to help you really articulate the actual emotion, not just a broad like anger, sadness, happy, mad, enraged. So gets a little deeper into what the emotion is. And then, like some of you said, you already know, you just want to allow that emotion to flow through you. So step number 2 is to engage in the emotion. Once you know what it is, then it's time to just sit with it, not in it. Remember, to sit with it and allow it to be felt. So it'll really just take that 90 seconds. And some questions here that you can ask yourself when you're engaging with that emotion is, what is that emotion teaching me? Maybe even where do I feel it in my body? Because most often we'll feel emotions in our body. There's a whole science around that as well, and the nervous system. Then when you get to step 3 is where you're really going to learn to take some action, right? So you're kind of going through a process of deciding what it is that you're going to need to do to move an emotion through you. And then I like to give this question: how do I move my mind? How do I move my body or my heart? So those are 3 ways you can look to inward, and also when you're with people, to answer the question. Is it something you need to do with your mind? Like, do you need to read? Do you need to learn something new? Is it something you need to do with your body? Like, do you need to move your body, or do you need to be still? And you saw all of those come up in our chats, right? We all know what we need to do. It's just a matter of taking ourselves through this process. And then what might your heart need to do? Do you need to connect with somebody, right? Do you need to take 3 deep breaths? Do you need to put your hands over your heart? So that's what I mean by, do I move my mind, my body, or my heart? And who can you share this with when you're ready? And it's very important in any emotional process that we get to a place where at some point, hopefully we're connecting with others, because all of the longitudinal studies in relational studies and well-being articulate and kind of come to the end point, which is positive relationships are the single most contributing factor to living a flourishing life. So remember connection in all of this, right? Connecting with yourself in a non-judgmental way, and connecting with someone else. And then you're getting to a place where you're choosing an action. So you're going to proceed with whatever it is that you kind of decided in your process part of the process. In the process part of the process, you decided what action you were going to take. And so that's when you're going to want to do that action. Now, the key here, and especially with being in this field and as healthcare professionals, is really deciding what you can do with the time you have available to you. Because one of the things I get, and I've experienced myself, is that I don't have enough time. So, uh, as healthcare professionals, it's really important to act in the time we have. So, like I said, maybe it's 3 deep breaths, right? Everyone usually has time for 3 deep breaths. You can do 3 deep breaths walking from one room to the next, or from one end of the dining room to the other, or from one area of the building to the other. And then you might need to do something else, right, to process that emotion, because maybe the situation that caused that emotion is a little complex. You're going to need to schedule time for that later in the day so that you're not just stuffing it and trying to forget it or ignore it. You're processing what you can with the time you have available to you, and then you're going to take it up later. So don't just leave it, in other words. So, I don't know if I have time to practice. So I'm going to leave this to the questions, because I have to go through the other the other cycle. So the proactive cycle is similar, but there are some differences. So again, this is not just for positive emotional space. It is for both, but we tend to generate emotion that we want to feel, right? So the proactive cycle is more like it's a catalyst. So when you want to feel something, you need to know that you have the power and the capacity within you, and so do the folks you're working with, to generate positive emotions as well, or emotions that would be helpful and not harmful. Because obviously, if we go back to the very beginning of our session, we don't want to live in our worst mood all the time, right? We do want to live in our best mood. And we probably want to spend more time in our best mood than in our worst mood, because otherwise we aren't going to feel like life is worth living. So that's why this is a proactive cycle. And this is steps for you to take to generate emotion. So the first thing, again, is step number one: what emotion do you want to experience? Articulate that. You can use some of the same tools that I shared in the other cycle. And then the second step, again, engage. So how are you going to move your mind, your body, or your heart? And how do you share that? Who are you going to share that with? What are the things that you think you need to do to help you feel that emotion? So a lot of you brought up peace in our chat. And so, and Matt, you know what? The thing is, that picture brought up that visualization, initiated that emotional response. So there's a really powerful tool right there. I don't know if you know, but as soon as you visualize an emotion, it does bring about the emotion. So even if you wanted for somebody to feel peace, you could ask them, or even yourself, what was the last thing you did that was really peaceful experience for you? And as they go back into that memory, that's going to generate the same emotion that you're looking to evoke. So then you're going to decide, your action that you're going to take, and you're going to move yourself to do what you think is best. And again, as healthcare professionals, very important. What can we do with the time that we have? And we might be able to do some right there, like talking about a memory, depending on who you're talking. If it's with a colleague, you can talk about a memory in a couple minutes. If you're with a resident, maybe not. You're going to have to pick and choose which resident and when. But you're going to find the time that's appropriate. And the most beautiful thing about the proactive cycle is that when you want to be that catalyst to generate an emotion that would be helpful for you, for your team, for the folks you're working with, schedule it. Just be intentional and get it put into the calendar, like as an event, or put into your daytime as like, this is meditation time, or this is the time when I'm going to do stretches, or this is the time when I'm going to journal, or this is the time when I'm going to plan an interactive puzzle making opportunity with somebody. So whatever it is in your setting. And then here's the big difference in this cycle is the act of noticing. And this is very critical. When you experience that emotion and you take the action, you're going to need to relish in that. Now, that is savoring, and that's a whole nother workshop on its own. But you really want to savor the emotion, and you want to recognize the benefits of that emotion. And in this particular case, like when I work with folks, we create like ways to document this kind of thing. So everyone would have like a little kind of cheat sheet, if you will, and they'd be like, okay, when I meditate, I feel peace. And then you can make any notes of like, when it worked better, like morning or night or whatever. But what you're doing here is you're evaluating what you've done. And you, as healthcare providers, we evaluate all the time. We over evaluate. But it is important to evaluate what you're doing to experience certain emotions because you want to be able to repeat it and you want to be able to know what works and when it does and when it doesn't. So that's really quickly sort of the two cycles. And in essence, we're really learning a new language. One of the things one of my co-founder colleagues calls me as a CEO, he calls me a chief emotional optimizer. And so for all of us, you know, what we need to do is just feel it before we fix it. Really, that's all that we're looking to do. I think so many times we go past the feeling and we just want to fix and solve, right? We want to pour happy on people. And so just know and remember that that dark place is just a place that you visit, but it's not a place that you're looking to call home. And I think that's what a CEO is able to do with emotions. They know that, yes, it's going to be a bit uncomfortable, but I know that I'm not going to be there forever. And I'm going to trust myself and I'm going to learn processes like these so that I don't have to get stuck in there. You kind of become a bit of an emotional detective. I'm going to let you guys muddle over this, but we don't have a ton of time to go into it. The research shows that emotion does show up in the body. And this is a picture of a beautiful research, that piece that was done. And they just asked all the participants to articulate where in their body they were feeling certain emotions. So yes, your body does feel emotion. And then sometimes when we're with people, it's when they are folks that are still using their facial expressions. I know that not everybody always does, but there is 6 universal ones, and we can still, you know, use people's facial expressions and their body language to look for emotions, because sometimes we're not used to it, right? So we don't really know where to go with people to figure out what it is they're feeling. And then using their facial expressions or their body language could be a really good way to say, hey, it looks like, you know, you're feeling a little bit blue or lonely or sad today. Like, is that the case? And just confirm with them. So I just want to open it up for a little brief period here. We only have 10 minutes left. So any questions from anybody? I literally planned this at 30 minutes and I overtalk all the time and you guys had me crying. So I just got really passionate. So I hope that's okay. This is a big topic and we just like, you know, it's like an iceberg, right? There's so much under the surface of the water and we hardly covered anything that was on the surface. We went by in a speedboat. So yeah, it's really, and it takes a long time. You know, it takes a good 8 to 12 months to work with teams to incorporate this emotional language and the discipline of positive psychology and well-being into their culture and into their practices so that the tasks, like I said, are happening simultaneously with connection. If that makes sense. Well, hopefully you're all feeling. Well, I have a question for you. I'm grateful it was free. We need more free resources, don't we? We need our governments to be sponsoring a little bit more humanistic, you know, and it's all in the literature. Like I was reading a document in Alberta about, you know, some of the suggestions for continuing care here, and the language is all there. They don't want it to be patient-centered. They want it to be human. And I'm like, well, we need to start talking about this stuff and getting emotions into care. So for sure. Um, so I'll just end with this slide here. No matter who you're caring for, making the future just a little bit brighter is going to require something else. And it's going to require something you haven't given before. So you're going to learn to care and be cared for at the same time. And you're going to learn to give and to receive at the same time. You're going to learn to be okay with tears and pain and messy emotions. And if you're anything like me, which we share so many similarities, you've probably learned to guard your heart over time. So we need to learn to let the layers of the onion away and guard down so that we can make vulnerable more normal and we can give people a chance to be human. I'll never forget this one client that I was working with. She was in late stages of dementia. She had suffered from a stroke. And so she basically lost most of her ability to communicate, although she could still understand and rationalize in conversation. And one time I went to visit her, and during our session, she was crying. So I just sat with her in her lounger, and she sobbed. And she sobbed. My shirt on my shoulder was drenched with her tears and her snot. I know, thinking IP&C, but um, that can all be washed away. What happened in those moments with her was that she knew it was okay for her to feel what she was going to feel, whatever it was, with me. And during the time where she was sobbing, and after one of those 90-second moments where she actually caught her breath, she just kept articulating words she'd never said before. She was saying to me, "Miss my mother, miss mother's love." And so then I knew, because I had connected with her in that really dark emotional space, some of the things that she was feeling from time to time. And she learned that it was safe to be in that space with me. And there was no pill that anyone could have given her. And in fact, what ended up happening was I created a chart for all the healthcare workers. And I said, is she in emotional pain or is she in physical pain? Because if she's in physical pain, she could tell you, she could still say, yeah. And then you could give her a pill. But when she's in emotional pain, there's no pill that's going to fix it. She needs you. She needs your heart. She needs you to know that she's human and it's okay for her to feel whatever it is she's feeling. And when it came time for her to leave this life, I was able to help her process her saying goodbye, to find her peace with dying. And we left cards for all of her family that we created together. So the future of care is human, and it's going to require your heart. And we get an opportunity to feel life together. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to connecting with you guys offline if you like, but it's just been an absolute pleasure.